Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Thunderstrike and watched the stars shift from white streaks back to pinpoints of light. The ship shuddered as it dropped out of hyperspace after 18 months of travel. Jake felt his stomach settle as the artificial gravity adjusted to normal space conditions. "We have arrived at the Kepler system, Captain," said Lieutenant Amy Foster from her communications station. Her voice was steady, but Jake could hear the worry underneath. All knew why they were here. Jake nodded and looked out at the darkness ahead. Somewhere in this system was New Haven Colony, home to 40,000 people. 3 weeks ago, the colony had sent a desperate message asking for help. Then nothing. Complete silence. "Run a full sensor sweep," Jake ordered. "I want to know what happened here." The bridge of the Thunderstrike was smaller than most civilian ships, built for efficiency rather than comfort. 1,200 crew members lived and worked in the cramped spaces below. This was humanity's first real battleship, designed not for exploration or trade, but for war. Jake hoped they would never need to use it for its intended purpose. "Commander." Rick Barnes stepped up beside Jake. Rick was a big man with gray hair and calm eyes. He had served in the Earth Defense Force for 20 years before joining the Deep Space Program. "Captain, we're detecting debris fields where the orbital stations." "Should be," Rick said quietly. Jake felt a cold weight settle in his chest. The orbital stations housed mining equipment and served as the main communication hub for the colony. If they were gone, it meant trouble. "What about the planet?" Jake asked. Lieutenant Foster shook her head. "No radio signals, sir. No emergency. Beacons. Nothing from the surface." Dr. Susan Blake looked up from her science station. She was young for a department head, but she knew more about alien life than anyone else on the ship. "Captain, I'm reading atmospheric disturbances on the planet. Signs of recent orbital bombardment." The bridge went quiet. Orbital bombardment meant someone had attacked the colony from space. In the 200 years since humans had joined the Galactic Harmony Council, there had been no wars. Conflicts were solved through talking and trade agreements. War was something from the history books. "Sir," called Navigation Officer Pete Williams from his station. "I'm detecting ships on the far side of the planet, big ones." Jake walked over to the main display screen. The image showed several large vessels in orbit around New Haven. The ships were unlike anything in the human database. They were dark and angular, covered in sharp edges and weapon ports. "Those aren't Harmony Council ships," Rick said. Dr. Blake was already running the ship designs through the computer. "I'm not finding any matches in our records. These ships use technology we've never seen before." Jake studied the alien vessels. Each one was at least 3 times the size of the Thunderstrike. He counted 12 of them, arranged in a defensive formation around the planet. Whatever had happened to New Haven Colony, these ships were responsible. "Amy, try to contact those ships," Jake ordered. "Standard Harmony Council protocols." Amy worked at her station for several minutes before shaking her head. "They're not responding to any of our signals, Captain. They seem to be using a completely different communication system. Can you break through to them?" "I'm trying, sir, but their technology is very advanced. Much more advanced than ours." Jake felt the weight of command settle on his shoulders. 40,000 people had called for help, and now they were silent. The evidence suggested they were all dead, killed by aliens using superior technology. The Thunderstrike was alone, outnumbered and outgunned. Captain Dr. Blake said, "I'm detecting energy signatures from those ships that match theoretical weapons we've never seen in practice. If my readings are correct, each of those vessels could destroy a moon." Rick moved closer to Jake. "Orders, sir?" Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. They were good people, trained professionals who had volunteered for this mission knowing the risks. But none of them had expected this. Humanity had been part of the galactic community for 2 centuries without ever firing a shot in anger. "Pete, how long before they detect us?" Jake asked. "At current distance and with our stealth systems active, probably 6 hours before their sensors pick us up," Pete replied. 6 hours to decide the fate of his ship and crew. Jake walked to his command chair and sat down. The leather was worn from 18 months of use during the long journey from Earth. He thought about his wife Sarah back on Earth, about the promise he had made to come home safely. but he also thought about the families on New Haven, the children who had been playing in the colony's gardens, the scientists who had been working to make the planet suitable for human life, the elderly people who had moved there for the peaceful retirement they had been promised. "Amy, send a message to Earth Command," Jake said finally. "It have found New Haven Colony. Tell them it has been destroyed by unknown hostile forces. Tell them we are the only human ship in the system." Amy's fingers moved across her controls. "Message sent, sir, but it will take 6 months to reach Earth. 6 months. By then, whatever happened here would be long over. The Thunderstrike and her crew would face this alone." "Sir," Dr. Blake called out, "I'm detecting movement from the alien fleet. 3 smaller ships are breaking away from the main group." Jake stood up and walked to the display screen. 3 sleek vessels, each still larger than the Thunderstrike, were moving away from the planet. Their course would bring them close to the human ship's position. "They're scanning for us," Pete said. "Our stealth won't hold against active sensors." "At close range, how long do we have?" Jake asked. "Maybe 2 hours before they find us." "It's 2 hours to make the most important decision of his life." Jake looked at the faces of his crew, saw fear, but also determination. They all knew what those ships had done to New Haven Colony. They all understood what would happen if these aliens decided to attack other human worlds. The Galactic Harmony Council would want him to attempt diplomatic contact. It would expect him to try to negotiate to find a peaceful solution. That was how civilized species handled conflicts. But Jake also knew that diplomacy required both sides to want peace. The destroyed colony and the advancing scout ships suggested these aliens had no interest in talking. "All hands, this is the captain," Jake announced over the ship's communication system. "We have found evidence that New Haven Colony has been destroyed by hostile alien forces. Unknown ships are currently investigating our area. All crew members should report to battle stations and prepare for possible combat operations." The bridge erupted in quiet activity as crew members checked their equipment and ran through combat procedures they had only practiced in simulations. The Thunderstrike had never fired her weapons in anger, but she was built for this moment. Jake sat back down in his command chair and watched the 3 alien scouts getting closer. In less than 2 hours, they would find the Thunderstrike. When that happened, Jake would have to decide whether to run, fight, or try to surrender. He thought about the 40,000 people who would never go home to their families. He thought about his duty as a human officer and as a member of the Galactic Harmony Council. Most of all, he thought about what kind of galaxy his children would inherit. The alien ships continued their approach, and Captain Jake Morrison prepared to make a choice that would change everything. Admiral Lisa Chen stood on the command deck of the massive Warthen dreadnought and watched her scout ships move toward the unknown contact. Her forearms moved across the control panels with practiced ease. The Vorthens had been rebuilding their empire for 500 years. And now they were ready to reclaim their place as the dominant force in the galaxy. The destruction of the human colony had been perfect, quick, efficient, and complete. It would serve as an excellent message to the other weak species in the Galactic Harmony Council. The age of peace was over. The Vorthens had returned. Lisa's species had once ruled a quarter of the galaxy before the other races united against them. The war had lasted 50 years and ended with the Vorthon homeworld burning. But some had escaped to the dark spaces between galaxies, spending centuries perfecting their weapons and their hatred. Admiral called Subcommander Vex from his station. "The scout ships report they have found the source of the contact. It appears to be a single vessel, much smaller than our scouts." Lisa nodded with satisfaction. The Harmony Council was responding exactly as predicted. They would send a small diplomatic ship to investigate, probably hoping to negotiate. These soft species had forgotten what real power looked like. "Have they attempted to communicate?" Lisa asked. "No, Admiral. The vessel appears to be trying to hide from our sensors. Their stealth technology is primitive, but functional." Lisa smiled, showing the sharp teeth that had once terrorized half the galaxy. The humans were afraid. Good. Fear was the beginning of wisdom. On the Thunderstrike, Dr. Susan Blake watched her instruments with growing concern. The alien scout ships were unlike anything in the human database. Their hulls seemed to absorb sensor beams rather than reflect them, making detailed scans nearly impossible. "Captain," she called to Jake Morrison, "these ships are using some kind of adaptive armor. It changes properties as I scan it. This is technology far beyond anything the Harmony Council has ever developed." Jake studied the approaching vessels. On the main screen, he moved with a grace that suggested artificial intelligence guidance systems. Each ship bristled with weapon ports and sensor arrays. There was no doubt these were warships, built for one purpose only. "Any luck with communications?" Jake asked Amy Foster. Amy shook her head in frustration. "I've tried every protocol in our database. These aliens are either ignoring us, or they can't understand our signals. Wait, I'm getting something." Screen flickered, and then displayed an image that made everyone on the bridge step back. The alien that appeared was tall and thin, with 4 arms and skin that looked like dark metal. Its eyes were completely black, and when it spoke, its voice was like grinding machinery. "Known vessel," the alien said in perfect English, "You have entered Vorthon space. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. You have 30 seconds to comply." The transmission ended before anyone could respond. Jake felt the blood drain from his face. These aliens had learned human language, which meant they had been studying humanity for some time. The attack on New Haven had not been random. "Captain," Commander Rick Barnes said quietly, "they're not interested in talking." Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. They were all staring at him, waiting for orders. The weight of 1,200 lives pressed down on his shoulders. One wrong decision, and they would all die in the cold darkness of space. "Amy, open a channel," Jake ordered. "A channel open, sir." "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the EU's Thunderstrike, representing the Earth Defense Force and the Galactic Harmony Council. We demand to know why you attacked New Haven Colony." Those people were civilians. The response came immediately. Admiral Lisa Chen appeared on the screen again, and this time she was smiling. "Captain Morrison, I am Admiral Chen of the Vorthon Empire. Your civilians died because they were weak. Their world now belongs to us, as will all human worlds in time." Jake felt anger rising in his chest. "The Galactic Harmony Council will not allow this aggression to continue," Lisa laughed. A sound like breaking glass. "The Harmony Council is weak, Captain. They have forgotten that the strong take what they want from the weak." "We will remind them of this truth. We won't surrender our ship," Jake said firmly. "Then you will die with honor, which is more than your colonists received." The transmission ended. Jake turned to his crew. Every face on the bridge showed the same mix of fear and determination. They all understood what was happening. The peaceful galaxy they had known was ending, and they were about to become part of history. "All hands, battle stations," Jake announced over the ship's communication system. "This is not a drill. You're about to engage hostile alien forces. Remember your training and do your duty." Chief Weapons Officer Tony Martinez activated the Thunderstrike's weapon systems. The ship had been designed by military engineers who understood that peace was fragile. Hidden beneath the diplomatic exterior were kinetic accelerator cannons capable of firing projectiles at incredible speeds. "Weapons ready, Captain," Tony reported. "All systems showing green." Engineering Chief Maria Santos pushed the ship's fusion reactors to full power. The Thunderstrike had been built with multiple backup systems and redundant power supplies. Human engineers always planned for the worst possible scenario. "Power at maximum, sir," Maria called from engineering. "All backup systems are online." Jake watched the 3 alien scout ships continue their approach. They moved in a perfect triangle formation, clearly expecting an easy victory. Each ship was larger than the Thunderstrike and probably carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon. "Pete, can we run?" Jake asked his navigation officer. Pete Williams checked his instruments and shook his head. "Not from here, sir. They're too close and too fast. If we try to escape now, they'll catch us before we can jump to hyperspace." Jake nodded. He had expected that answer. The aliens had positioned themselves perfectly to cut off any escape route. This had been planned carefully. Dr. Blake monitored the alien communications and discovered something interesting. Captain, they're talking to each other on an open channel. I don't think they realize we can listen. What are they saying? They're discussing how to capture our ship intact. They want to study our technology before they destroy us. Ah. Jake felt a cold smile spread across his face. Aliens thought they were dealing with a helpless diplomatic vessel. They had no idea what kind of ship the Thunderstrike really was. Tony, target the lead scout ship, Jake ordered. Wait for my command. Target acquired, sir. Ready to fire on your order. The lead alien scout ship moved closer, apparently confident that the human vessel would surrender at the last moment. Jake could see weapon ports opening on its hull. It's preparing to disable the Thunderstrike's engines. Jake thought about his wife Sarah back on Earth. He thought about the children who had died on New Haven Colony. He thought about what would happen to other human worlds if these aliens were allowed to continue their campaign of conquest. This is for New Haven, Jake said quietly. Then, louder, fire. The Thunderstrike's main cannon fired a depleted uranium slug at 30% of light speed.
Ow.
The projectile crossed the space between the ships in less than a second. Scout ship, designed to deflect energy weapons, had no defense against a solid object moving at relativistic speeds. The scout ship simply disappeared in a flash of light and debris. The other two ships stopped dead in space, apparently unable to understand what had just happened. Target destroyed, Captain Tony reported with satisfaction. Jake looked at the remaining scout ships and then at his crew. They had just fired the first shot in what might become a galactic war. There was no going back now. All ships, all crews, Jake announced. Welcome to the future. The two remaining Vorthan scout ships hung motionless in space for several seconds. Their crews stared at the empty darkness where their lead ship had been moments before. Nothing remained except a small cloud of glowing particles that was already spreading and fading. Admiral Lisa Chen watched the destruction from her command ship and felt something she had not experienced in centuries. Confusion. Her scout ships were equipped with the finest energy shields in the galaxy. Nothing should have been able to penetrate them so completely. What happened to Scout 1? She demanded. Sub-Commander Vex worked frantically at his instruments. Admiral, I cannot determine the cause of destruction. There was no energy discharge from the human ship. No plasma beam, no particle cannon, nothing. Then how did they destroy our ship? Unknown, Admiral? The attack appeared to be some form of kinetic impact, but that is impossible. No civilized species uses kinetic weapons. Lisa felt a cold chill run through her body. Kinetic weapons were primitive, brutal things that had been abandoned thousands of years ago. They were wasteful and unpredictable. Only barbarians would use such crude technology. On the Thunderstrike bridge, Captain Jake Morrison watched the two remaining scout ships begin to move again. They were more cautious now, keeping their distance and running constant scans. They're trying to figure out how we destroyed their friend, Dr. Susan Blake observed. Their scans are getting more intense. Let them scan, Tony Martinez said from his weapons station. They won't understand what they're looking at until it's too late. Jake nodded. The Thunderstrike's kinetic cannons were based on technology that was thousands of years old, but refined to perfection. Humans had never abandoned kinetic weapons because they understood something that other species had forgotten. Sometimes the simplest solution was the best solution. Captain Amy Foster called from communications. I'm receiving a transmission from the alien command ship. Put it on screen. Admiral Chen appeared again, but this time her expression was different. Confidence was gone, replaced by something that looked like concern. Human captain, she said, you have destroyed one of our ships using forbidden technology. This is a violation of galactic law. Jake almost laughed. Galactic law. Yeah. You just murdered 40,000 innocent people, and now you want to talk about law? Those humans were weak. We gave them the mercy of a quick death. But you have used kinetic weapons, which are banned by all civilized species. Then I guess we're not civilized, Jake replied. Pete, take us into the asteroid field. Navigation. Officer Pete Williams. turned the Thunderstrike toward the dense cluster of space rocks that surrounded the system's mining operations. The ship moved smoothly through space, its engines running silent to avoid detection. Captain, Commander Rick Barnes said quietly, "What's the plan?" Jake studied the tactical display. 20 Vorthon dreadnoughts were moving toward their position, each one massive enough to carry thousands of troops and weapons that could crack a planet's crust. In a straight fight, the Thunderstrike would last maybe 10 minutes. "We're going to make them come to us," Jake said. "In there, their size works. Against them." The asteroid field was a maze of floating rocks, some as small as houses and others as large as cities. The mining ships had been working here for years, creating tunnels and chambers throughout the larger asteroids. It was the perfect place for a smaller ship to hide and strike. "All ships pursue and destroy," Admiral Chen ordered her fleet. "Want that human vessel eliminated immediately?" The Vorthon dreadnoughts entered the asteroid field in formation, their massive hulls easily pushing aside the smaller rocks. Their sensors swept the area constantly, searching for the human ship. But the Thunderstrike was no longer where they expected to find it. Jake had taken his ship deep into the largest asteroid, using an old mining tunnel to hide from the alien. Sensors the rock around them absorbed their energy signature, making them nearly invisible. "Contact," reported Pete from his navigation station. 3 dreadnoughts moving past our position. Jake watched the alien ships on his display. Were magnificent vessels, clearly designed to inspire fear and project power. But they were also huge and slow, built for fighting other massive ships in open space. "Tony, can you target their engines?" Jake asked. "Yes, sir. Range is close, and they're not expecting an attack from inside the asteroid. Fire when ready." The Thunderstrike's cannon fired again, sending another kinetic slug through space at impossible speed. The projectile punched through the rear dreadnought's hull like it was made of paper, destroying the ship's main reactor in a massive explosion. The other 2 ships immediately began evasive maneuvers, but they were too big and the asteroid field was too dense. One of them scraped against a large rock, damaging its hull plating and exposing internal systems. "Second target," Jake ordered. Tony fired again. This time the slug hit the damaged dreadnought in its exposed reactor housing. The explosion was even larger than the first, sending debris flying in all directions and damaging nearby asteroids. The third dreadnought tried to retreat, but found its path blocked by floating wreckage from its destroyed companions. In desperation, it fired its main weapons at the asteroid where it thought the human ship was hiding. The energy beams carved deep channels in the rock, but missed the Thunderstrike completely. Jake had already moved his ship to a different hiding spot, using the network of mining tunnels like an underground subway system. "Target number 3, Jake said calmly. The third dreadnought died like the others. Its hull split open by a kinetic slug that traveled faster than its crew could react. In less than 5 minutes, the Thunderstrike had destroyed 3 ships that should have been able to defeat an entire fleet. "Admiral," Chen watched her ships die one by one and felt something she had never experienced before: fear. Fighting like nothing she had ever encountered. They used the environment as a weapon, struck without warning, and disappeared before her ships could respond. "All ships withdraw from the asteroid field," she ordered. "Maintain safe distance and prepare orbital bombardment." But Jake was not finished. As the Vorthon fleet pulled back, he moved the Thunderstrike to a new position. The largest asteroid in the field contained an old mining station with massive ore processing equipment. "Maria, can you overload those processing units?" Jake asked his engineering chief. Chief Maria Santos studied the station's power systems through the ship's sensors. "Yes, sir, but it will create a massive explosion. We need to be at least 10 kilometers away when it goes off." "Do it," Maria worked, quickly using the ship's computers to hack into the old mining station's control systems. The ore processors were designed to break down asteroids using controlled nuclear reactions. If those reactions were allowed to go out of control, the results would be devastating. The Thunderstrike moved away from the station as Maria completed her work. Behind them, the processing units began to glow with dangerous energy as their safety systems were disabled one by one. "All units ready to detonate," Maria reported. Jake waited until several more Vorthan ships entered the asteroid field, drawn by what they thought was another opportunity to corner the human vessel. Now he said the mining station exploded with the force of a small star. The blast waves spread outward at incredible speed, shattering asteroids and turning them into deadly projectiles. For more Vorthan dreadnoughts were caught in the explosion, their hulls crushed by flying rocks or torn apart by the energy release. In the space of 10 minutes, the Thunderstrike had destroyed 7 enemy ships without taking a single hit in return. The Vorthan fleet, which had entered the system confident of easy victory, now found itself facing an enemy that fought by rules they did not understand. Admiral Chen stared at the spreading cloud of debris where her ships had been, and finally understood what she was facing. The humans did not fight like civilized beings. They fought like the ancient warriors of legend, using cunning and brutality in equal measure. For the first time in 500 years, a Vorthon commander considered the possibility of retreat. Admiral Lisa Chen paced across the command deck of her flagship, her forearms clenched in frustration. The bridge crew watched her with nervous eyes, afraid to speak. "Report," she demanded. Sub-Dash Commander Vex looked up from his station with obvious reluctance. "Admiral, our remaining ships are maintaining position outside the asteroid field. The human vessel appears to have withdrawn deeper into the rock clusters. What are our total losses?" 7 dreadnoughts destroyed, Admiral. No survivors recovered." Lisa stopped pacing. 7 ships represented thousands of Vorthon warriors, each one trained from birth for conquest. The loss was not just tactical, it was personal. These humans had made her look weak in front of her own fleet. Admiral called the communications officer. "We are receiving messages from the other fleet commanders. They are requesting permission to withdraw and reassess our strategy." Lisa's black eyes flashed with anger. "Who retreats without my permission will be executed for cowardice. We will not be defeated by a single primitive vessel on the Thunderstrike." Captain Jake Morrison studied the tactical display while Dr. Susan Blake analyzed the enemy fleet's communications. The ship was hidden deep inside a hollowed-out asteroid, its systems running on minimum power to avoid detection.
Out there.
Arguing among themselves, Dr. Blake reported. "The other Vorthan commanders want to pull back, but their admiral is refusing to retreat." Commander Rick Barnes looked at the display, showing the remaining enemy ships. "That still leaves us facing 13 dreadnoughts, Captain. Even with our tactical advantage, those are bad odds." The Thunderstrike had been lucky so far, but luck would not last forever. The ship had taken some damage from debris during the last engagement, and their ammunition was limited. Each kinetic slug took enormous amounts of energy to accelerate, and the ship's reactors were already running hot. Our weapon systems?" Jake asked Tony Martinez. "After that, we'll need to let the reactors cool down or risk a meltdown." 8 shots against 13 ships. The math was simple and unforgiving. "Put it on screen." Admiral Chen appeared again, but this time her expression was different. The confusion and concern had been replaced by cold hatred. "Human captain," she said, "you have cost me 7 ships and thousands of warriors. I offer you one final chance to surrender. Give up now, and I will make your death quick." At his crew, and then back at the screen, "Leave this system immediately and never return. Take your remaining ships and go back to whatever dark hole you crawled out of. You command a single ship against my entire fleet. Single ship has destroyed 7 of yours," Jake pointed out. "How many more are you willing to lose?" They all knew the odds, but they also knew what was at stake. "All hands, this is the captain," Jake announced over the ship's communication system. "We have hurt the enemy badly, but they still outnumber us. What we do in the next few hours will determine not just our fate, but the fate of every human colony in the galaxy. I won't lie to you about our chances, but I will tell you this. We are going to make them pay for every inch." Admiral Chen gathered her remaining fleet commanders for a strategy meeting via holographic communication. The faces that appeared around her command table showed doubt and concern. "Admiral," said Fleet Commander Drac, "perhaps we should consider a tactical withdrawal. We can return with reinforcements and overwhelming firepower." Lisa replied coldly. "One human ship has made us look like fools. If word of this spreads, every species in the galaxy will think the Vorthons are weak. They use the environment against us. They strike without warning, and their weapons ignore our shields completely. Lisa slammed her hand on the table. We have superior technology and superior numbers. We will overwhelm them with coordinated attacks from multiple directions. The fleet commanders looked uncertain, but none dared to openly challenge her authority. For a full fleet assault on the asteroid field, inside the asteroid, Engineering Chief Maria Santos worked frantically to keep the ship's systems operational. The constant maneuvering and weapons fire had pushed the Thunderstrike beyond its design limits. Coolant leaked from damaged pipes, and several backup systems had failed. "Captain," she called over the communication system, "I need at least 2 hours to repair the damage to our primary reactor. If we push it much harder, we risk a complete shutdown." Jake felt his heart sink. 2 hours was time they did not have. "Do what you can, Maria. We might not have 2 hours." Tactical Officer Ben Cooper studied the enemy formation on his display. The Vorthons had learned from their mistakes and were approaching in a coordinated pattern that would make... "Captain, they're coming at us from 6 different directions. They've spread out to cover all the major passages through the asteroid field." Jake looked at the tactical display and felt a cold certainty settle in his stomach. The enemy had finally figured out how to use their superior numbers effectively. Thunderstrike could not be in 6 places at once. "Tony, select your targets carefully. Make every shot count." "Yes, sir." Targeting the lead ships in each formation. The first Vorthon dreadnought entered weapon range and immediately began firing at every asteroid large enough to hide the human ship. Energy beams carved through rock like butter, creating clouds of debris and superheated gas. "Target acquired," Tony announced. The Thunderstrike fired, and another Vorthon ship died in a flash of light and metal. But this time, the other ships did not retreat. They continued their advance, firing constantly and methodically destroying every possible hiding place. "Second target," Jake ordered. Another kinetic slug found its mark, punching through armor and destroying vital systems. "Captain, they've found us," Pete Williams reported. Multiple ships converging on our position. Jake watched the tactical display as enemy ships closed in from all sides. The asteroid that had been their shelter was now becoming their tomb. "All hands prepare for emergency acceleration," Jake announced. "We're leaving." The Thunderstrike burst from the asteroid like a missile, its engines burning at maximum power. Energy beams flashed past the ship as Vorthon gunners tried to target the fast-moving vessel, but Jake had one last trick to play. As the ship raced away from the asteroid field, Maria Santos triggered a series of explosions she had been preparing. Mining charges placed throughout the largest asteroids detonated in sequence, creating a chain reaction that turned the entire field into an expanding cloud of deadly debris. 3 more Vorthon ships were caught in the explosion, their hulls punctured by high-velocity rock fragments. The surviving ships found themselves flying through a storm of debris that made accurate targeting impossible. The Thunderstrike emerged from the chaos with damage to its hull, but still intact. Behind them, the asteroid field had become a graveyard. For 10 Vorthon dreadnoughts, Admiral Chen stared at the destruction and finally understood the truth. She was not fighting a primitive species with crude weapons. She was fighting an enemy that had turned warfare into an art form. Began to consider the possibility that the Vorthons might not be the superior species they believed themselves to be. The Thunderstrike limped through space, with smoke trailing from her damaged hull. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge and watched his crew work to keep the ship operational. They had destroyed 10 Vorthon dreadnoughts, but the cost had been high. 40% of his crew was either dead or wounded, and the ship's systems were failing one by one. "Damage report," Jake asked quietly. Commander Rick Barnes looked up from his station with tired eyes. "Main engines at 60%. Power. Life support is stable, but running on backup systems. We have hull breaches on 3 decks, and the medical bay is full." Dr. Susan Blake added her own grim assessment. "Captain, our ammunition is down to 2 kinetic slugs. After that, we'll be fighting with emergency weapons only." Jake nodded and looked at the tactical display. 3 Vorthon dreadnoughts remained. Operational, still pursuing his damaged ship. Admiral Chen had lost most of her fleet, but she refused to give up. The remaining ships moved carefully, no longer underestimating their human opponent. Amy, any word from Earth Command? Jake asked his communications officer. Amy Foster shook her head. Nothing yet, sir. Our message won't reach Earth for another 5.5 months. We're still on our own. On the Vorthon flagship, Admiral Lisa Chen stared at the tactical display and tried to understand how everything had gone so wrong. She had begun this mission with 15 powerful dreadnoughts and complete confidence in Vorthon superiority. Now, she had 3 damaged ships and a crew that looked at her with doubt in their eyes. Admiral Subcommander Vex said carefully. Perhaps we should consider that our mission objectives have changed. We have learned valuable information about human capabilities. We could return to Vorthon space and prepare a larger force. Lisa turned to face him with fury in her black eyes. Are you suggesting we retreat from a single human ship? Admiral, that single ship has destroyed 12 of our vessels. The humans clearly possess military technology we did not expect. A tactical withdrawal would allow us to study their methods and develop countermeasures. Lisa considered his words. The logical part of her mind knew he was right, but the warrior part of her soul burned with the need for victory. She had promised the Vorthon Empire that she would announce their return with a demonstration of unstoppable power. Instead, she had shown the galaxy that humans could defeat Vorthon forces using primitive weapons and clever tactics. No, she said finally, we finish this here. One way or another, that human ship will be destroyed. Jake watched the 3 remaining enemy ships move into attack formation. They had learned to keep their distance and coordinate their movements. There would be no more surprise attacks or clever ambushes. This would be a straight fight, and the odds were still against the Thunderstrike. Tony, how accurate are our remaining shots? Jake asked his weapons officer. Tony Martinez checked his targeting systems. At this range, with our damaged sensors, maybe 70% chance of hitting. But Captain, even if we destroy 2 more ships, that still leaves 1, and they know our limitations now. Jake understood. The Vorthons had figured out that the human ship had limited ammunition. It would be patient, force the Thunderstrike to waste its remaining shots, and then close in for the kill. Captain Engineering Chief Maria Santos called from her station. I have an idea. It's dangerous, but it might work. I'm listening. If we dump all our remaining reactor coolant into space and ignite it with our engines, we can create a massive explosion. It won't destroy their ships, but it might damage their sensors and give us a chance to get close. Close enough for what? Rick Barnes asked. We'll be out of ammunition. Maria smiled grimly. Close enough to ram them, sir. The Thunderstrike still has momentum, and we're built to take damage. If we hit them at full speed, we can take at least one of them with us. Bridge went silent as everyone considered her words. It was a suicide mission, but it might be their only chance to ensure that some of the Vorthon ships did not survive to attack other human colonies. Jake looked around at his crew. They were all watching him, waiting for his decision. These people had followed him across the galaxy and fought impossible odds without complaint. They deserved better than to die in an empty star system, but they also deserved the chance to make their deaths count. All hands, this is the captain, Jake announced over the ship's communication system. I won't lie to you about our situation. We are outnumbered, outgunned, and running out of options. But we have one chance to make sure these aliens never threaten another human world. It will require sacrifice from all of us. But it's the right thing to do. He paused, then continued. Anyone who wants to try to escape in the lifeboats has that right. I won't think less of any crew member who chooses to save themselves. But for those who stay, we're going to show these aliens what humans are really made of. The response came immediately. Not a single person requested transfer to the lifeboats. Every crew member on the Thunderstrike chose to stay and fight. Admiral Chen watched the human ship change course and head directly toward her fleet. The Thunderstrike's engines burned brighter than before, and its speed was increasing rapidly. What are they doing? She asked. Unknown, Admiral. They appeared to be on a collision course with our formation. Lisa studied the approaching ship and felt a chill of understanding. They're going to ram us. These humans would rather die than surrender. The realization hit her like a physical blow. The Vorthons had always believed that their willingness to die for the Empire made them superior warriors, but these humans were proving that they too would sacrifice everything for their people. "All ships, evasive maneuvers," Lisa ordered. "Do not let them reach us." But the Thunderstrike was no longer trying to hide or run clever maneuvers. The ship flew straight toward the Vorthon formation like an arrow, its engines burning at dangerous levels that would soon destroy them. "Firing our last shots," Tony announced. 2 kinetic slugs raced through space at incredible speed. The first one missed its target, but the second struck a Vorthon dreadnought in the engine section. The ship spun out of control, its main propulsion system destroyed. Now only 2 Vorthon ships remained operational, and the Thunderstrike was almost on top of them. "All crew, brace for impact," Jake ordered. The human ship struck the nearest Vorthon dreadnought with the force of a small asteroid. The collision tore both vessels apart, sending debris flying in all directions. Open like a flower. But her sacrifice took the enemy ship with her. Admiral Chen watched her flagship sister ship die and felt something break inside her spirit. In less than 6 hours, a single human vessel had destroyed 13 Vorthon dreadnoughts, and more than that, it had destroyed the myth of Vorthon invincibility. Admiral Subcommander Vex said quietly, "We should leave. Our mission has failed." Lisa nodded slowly. For the first time in her life, she understood defeat. "Set course for Vorthon space. We have much to report to the High Command." As her last ship limped away from the battlefield, Lisa thought about the humans she had just fought. They were not primitive barbarians as she had believed. They were warriors who combined advanced technology with a tactical brilliance that made them dangerous beyond measure. 3 months later, as the news of the Battle of New Haven reached Earth, the sacrifice of the Thunderstrike and her crew became legend. But more importantly, it became a warning. The galaxy was not as peaceful as humanity had believed. Earth's shipyards began working around the clock to build more vessels like the Thunderstrike. Human colonies throughout the galaxy received new defense ships and trained crews. The age of human innocence was over. When Admiral Chen finally reached Vorthon space and reported to the High Command, her news sent shockwaves through the Empire. The plan to reconquer the galaxy was quietly abandoned. The Vorthons had learned that some species were too dangerous to attack. Across the galaxy, other alien civilizations heard the story of how a single human ship had defeated an entire Vorthon fleet. The peaceful member species of the Harmony Council began to look at their human neighbors with new respect and new fear. The moment Earth's battleship arrived, the galaxy had indeed learned fear. But it had also learned that when humans chose to fight, they fought with a courage and determination that could not be defeated by superior numbers or advanced technology. Captain Jake Morrison and his crew had died as they lived, protecting innocent people and standing up to bullies.